Donald Trump had given himself 2 weeks to decide on U.S. action in this war. In the end, he didn't wait that long.
The strikes were a spectacular military success.
The U.S. president says Iran's 3 main nuclear facilities were destroyed. 6 bunker buster bombs were dropped on the Fordo underground compound, while 30 Tomahawk missiles were fired at 2 other sites. The first response from Iran came at about 7 a.m. local time here in Israel. Missiles were seen in the skies over Jerusalem, headed west. Israeli defenses appear to have taken out most of them, but not all. The Israeli ambulance service is reporting about 24 people were injured in strikes on Tel Aviv and Haifa. It has been a difficult morning for Israelis, but for many waking up in bomb shelters, word the U.S. had hit Iran was welcome news.
I think it will end the war. This is my hope. Maybe it is wishful thinking, but I hope it will be fine.
Congratulations, President Trump.
Israel's prime minister is thanking the U.S., saying the attack on Iran's nuclear facilities was a joint operation, but that only the U.S. had the weapons to take out the targets. The opposition leader here in Israel is calling the U.S. bombing the right thing for Israeli security and global security, but says Israel has now achieved its main objectives and should aim to wrap up the war.
Trump's bombing of Iran, a calculated gamble. In a dramatic announcement that sent shockwaves across the globe, President Trump declared that key Iranian nuclear facilities had been struck with precision. Publicly, he portrayed the operation as a sudden, reactionary measure taken in response to immediate threats. However, multiple reports have since suggested that the decision was anything but spontaneous. Sources indicate that members of his inner circle had been planning this strike for nearly 2 weeks before it was brought to the attention of the American public. By claiming an immediate response while secretly orchestrating the operation in advance, Trump not only misled the nation, but also set the stage for a deep crisis of trust between his administration and the people. A portrait of hypocrisy. For much of his tenure, Trump championed an America First agenda that promised to end endless wars and reduce frivolous military interventions. His campaign pledged to prioritize domestic issues over unnecessary foreign entanglements. The bombing of Iran, however, paints a very different picture. Rather than adhering to his publicly stated commitment, the operation reflected a premeditated strategy steeped in the same aggressive interventionism he had long criticized. By disguising the well-planned military action as a spur-of-the-moment decision, Trump demonstrated a clear hypocrisy. He publicly decried prolonged foreign conflicts and rushed decisions while secretly harboring grand military schemes well before unveiling them to the nation. The domino effect of deception. The revelations behind the timing of this operation have sparked widespread backlash both at home and abroad. International allies, who once supported his tough stance, now voice concerns over unilateral military actions that undermine diplomatic channels. Critics argue that bypassing established protocols and engaging in covert planning only serves to destabilize the delicate balance in an already volatile region. The decision-making process, shrouded in secrecy, has further eroded the trust that citizens and allies alike place in the American executive branch. The fallout from this covert strategy has not been limited to geopolitical repercussions. On the domestic front, the betrayal felt by many Americans has set the stage for unrest on home soil. Security officials across several states, particularly in communities with strong ties to the Middle East, have ramped up their vigilance. Concerns remain high that the operation could invite retaliatory actions, from cyber attacks to street-level violence, that would directly impact American citizens. The sense of deception has deepened suspicions and anxieties, painting a stark picture of an administration that appears more interested in theater than accountability. One of the most alarming prospects raised by this incident is the potential for a perpetual cycle of violence. Instead of delivering a definitive blow to Iran's nuclear capabilities, the premeditated strike risks igniting a series of retaliatory measures that could spiral into an unending conflict. With each military response potentially breeding further aggression, the nation teeters on the brink of what critics warn could evolve into a forever war. A relentless series of exchanges that drain resources, strain international alliances, and compromise the very security the operation was meant to ensure. The fallout from the bombing has been swift and severe. International allies and adversaries alike have expressed alarm at the escalation of violence in a region already blighted by of conflict. Notably, countries that once lauded President Trump's leadership have found themselves condemning the move. For instance, Pakistan, only a day earlier, set to nominate Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize for his role in de-escalating a separate conflict, had to reverse course, denouncing the strike as a violation of international law and a dangerous provocation. Prominent voices in global diplomacy are warning that the punitive backlash could unravel decades of delicate negotiations, thrusting the region further into instability and inadvertently setting a precedent for bypassing diplomatic channels in favor of military might. Bombing a nuclear facility, such as a uranium enrichment site, can have several significant impacts that span physical, environmental, and geopolitical dimensions. A targeted explosion is designed to inflict severe structural damage. In the case of a uranium enrichment facility, hardening measures like underground construction or protective barriers are specifically meant to withstand attacks, so specialized munitions, like bunker buster bombs, are used to penetrate deep into the facility. The explosion can create visible craters, collapse critical infrastructure, and block access routes like tunnel entrances. This level of damage typically disrupts or destroys the site's capability to continue its operations in the short term, potentially delaying the facility's overall nuclear production capacity for an extended period. Unlike a nuclear reactor, an enrichment facility primarily handles low-level radioactive materials. When such a facility is bombed, the risk of a catastrophic nuclear meltdown is minimal. However, the violent disruption may still cause localized environmental contamination. The explosion could generate and disperse radioactive dust and debris. Experts often note that while the immediate release of large amounts of radioactivity is unlikely, because the radioactive material in enrichment facilities is typically difficult for alpha particles to travel far or penetrate human skin, the disturbance of uranium compounds could still pose long-term health risks if contaminated dust is inhaled or ingested by people in the surrounding area. Beyond the direct physical and environmental consequences, bombing a nuclear facility carries significant geopolitical fallout. The deliberate targeting of a nation's nuclear infrastructure can escalate regional tensions and lead to retaliatory actions. In many cases, such strikes are likely to trigger a chain reaction of responses, from enhanced security measures or emergency preparedness on domestic soil to further military strikes by the targeted state. The long-term strategic implications might include a prolonged conflict or the onset of an unresolved, spiraling military engagement that complicates international diplomacy and damages trust among nations. In summary, while the immediate physical effects of bombing a nuclear facility are clear in terms of structural destruction and operational halting, the broader impact includes potential low-level radiological hazards and a heightened risk of geopolitical escalation that can have enduring consequences both locally and internationally. According to the Trump administration, the evidence for Iran's nuclear facilities was built on a combination of long-term classified intelligence and open-source data collected over many years. Intelligence agencies tracked sites such as Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan using satellite imagery, signals intelligence, and human intelligence sources that provided detailed observations about the facility's layouts and ongoing activities. Satellite images revealed characteristics consistent with nuclear operations. For example, Fordow appeared as a fortified underground complex, while Natanz showed the scale and design typical of a large industrial complex, with centrifuges used for uranium enrichment. These insights were supplemented by data and assessments from international monitoring agencies that had long reported on Iran's nuclear program. While the complete details of the intelligence remain classified for national security reasons, the combined evidence from multiple sources formed the basis for the administration's claim that these facilities were integral to Iran's pursuit of nuclear technology, potentially with weapons applications. The bombing of Iran stands as a powerful example of the dangers inherent in deception at the highest levels of government. By concealing a well-planned and timed military initiative under the guise of spontaneity, Trump not only betrayed the trust of the American people, but also raised serious questions about the decision-making processes behind critical foreign policy deployments. As the nation grapples with the fallout, both internationally and on its own soil, the episode forces a reckoning with the perils of hypocrisy in leadership. It invites a broader debate on the balance between military action and diplomatic integrity, and whether short-term tactical gains are worth the long-term risks of an unending cycle of conflict. This unfolding situation raises further questions. How can future administrations rebuild public trust after such deceptive practices? What measures might be put in place to ensure true transparency in military decision-making? And ultimately, how do we prevent well-intentioned rhetoric from being undermined by covert and premeditated actions that threaten both national security and global stability?